From the New Arts and Media Studios in Milwaukee, I'm Charles Purcell. This is The Log. The verdict on Meta recently, the jury finding, awarding the plaintiffs $375 million, I was pretty dismissive of that. But right on the heels of that was another jury verdict, which included Google. And people a lot smarter than me are saying that these court decisions are far more important than I thought. Yeah, the amount of the awards themselves, very small. But in what I've been reading since we spoke about this last, these are just the first of literally thousands of lawsuits. And these first couple of decisions, I guess, are rather groundbreaking as far as the culpability of the social media companies. And there could be just an avalanche of decisions in favor of plaintiffs in, as I said, thousands of cases. The result being a real financial hit to the companies, and more important than that, actual reform. Maybe we got something going here. So I'm not going to be as dismissive. And then I want to say this. Sure, I spent some time talking about the shortcomings of the Orange Menace. He's stupid. If there is such a thing as evil in the world, he certainly personifies that. He embodies all of the 7 deadly sins. He's a criminal and a rapist, and he should be in jail for the rest of his life. Sure, I say these things all the time. But I don't spend a lot of time saying it. I talk about the story of the day, and sometimes that's part of the story. As opposed to others, there's an entire genre of media that spends all of their time obsessed with him. That's where the term, what's the term they use? Trump derangement syndrome. That's where that term comes from. I don't know who first came up with that. It's designed as an insult against people on the left. But the diagnosis, the term anyway, I think really is appropriate for, as I said, a whole genre of media. That's pretty much all they do. Every utterance, every move, every gesture, every bruise on his hand, every cankle. They just can't get enough of talking about him. Okay, the reason I bring this up is because I am going to talk about him for a little bit right here. Because, in my observation anyway, he seems to have taken a turn for the worst. I mean, he was already outrageous. But there have just been a few examples lately that I can't wrap my head around. One, when he was on the tarmac in Memphis talking to some reporters, that's when he first said that they were having talks with Iran. That was just a total lie. That one. Well, what I noticed that seemed different, he seemed to be riffing with the reporters as though he were in an improv. I mean, sure, he lies all the time, but I've never quite seen this style of just riffing, of just making things up right in the moment. A good example was when one reporter asked him who was going to run the Strait of Hormuz. And he said that, well, maybe he would, or that maybe he and the Ayatollah would together. It was right off the top of his head. And he looked like he was doing improv, like he was going to start asking the audience for suggestions. I was half expecting him to start every sentence with yes and. It's new. And of course, it's not that he hasn't lied constantly and consistently for as long as we've known him, but it's this new kind of performance that he's doing. I've also never been one to spend a lot of time on his mental state. Yeah, I call him addled, but it's just as a passing note. I think I'm ready to jump on that bandwagon. The man is just seriously demented, and I've never really been one of the guys dwelling on that. But I've finally come around to it. Another example, again, that same incident on the tarmac, when he goes off on the paperclip. I think the tangent was that it was his idea to send ICE into airports. And it was such a brilliant idea, why didn't anybody else think of that? And that reminded him of the story of the paperclip. How the guy who invented it, everybody else thought, oh, why didn't I think of that? So obvious, so brilliant. But the thing is, he went off on the paperclip story at length And he said right off the top, 182 years ago, the guy who discovered the paperclip. That's what he said, discovered, not invented. Like, he was just walking around one day and looked down. Oh, look, there's a paperclip. But the fact that he said 182 years ago really caught my ear. I thought, what in the world is he talking about? So I looked up the history of the paperclip just because I was curious. 182 years ago was 1844. From my crack research on the paperclip, 1844 was not a significant year in the development of the paperclip. In fact, it didn't come around until about 40 or 50 years later. And then it went through a couple of phases. So the details of this particular anecdote aren't that important. Just the fact that he's able to just blurt out 182 years ago, as though it were fact. He has reached a new level even for him. This is becoming very, very strange. And especially and alarmingly at a time when the world is on fire. He's got this horrible war happening in Iran. He doesn't know what he's doing. American military personnel being sent by the thousands to the Middle East. There's a great possibility of a worldwide recession. Whole nations are running out of fuel. The Philippines, Pakistan, Asian nations, Vietnam, Myanmar, Singapore. They're down to about a month. Australia, the modern nation of Australia, down to 30 days worth of diesel and jet fuel. Ukraine is being abandoned. The TSA emergency, as I speak, continues. And he's doing the oddest things. The story a couple weeks ago, when he bought all the men in his inner circle, cabinet officials, advisors, bought them all shoes. He's got a shoe fetish. Didn't bother to ask them their size. He just guessed. And so you may have seen the pictures of, I think it was Marco Rubio, wearing the Florsheim shoes that the Orange Menace gifted him. And he looked like a little boy wearing his father's shoes. They were just huge, completely outsized. So all of these guys are wearing shoes that don't fit because of their sycophancy. But the fact that he even did it in the first place. Oh, you got to wear these shoes. I'll buy some for you. Not even bother to ask the size. Yeah, if in the past I've mentioned his state of dementia, I think it's usually been as a side issue to a greater story. For the first time, I'm joining a lot of other people in saying this is a story. He really has lost it. Even I've come around to this. Just very recently, he went off on the Sharpie in a meeting where they were discussing the most urgent and grave issues of war and peace, of life and death. And he went off for like 5 minutes on what different kind of pens are used to sign bills and how he loves the Sharpie. And he talked to the main guy at Sharpie and had him create a special black and gold one just for him. And then the reports came out that Sharpie spokesman said they didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah, he went off for 5 minutes on the Sharpie. Remember the one he used to alter the path of a hurricane? While whole nations are running out of fuel. We're soon going to be doing to multiple nations what we're doing to Cuba. Infrastructure collapse, blackouts. The severity of the damage he's causing globally is matched only by the depth of his dementia. Maybe I'm late to the game here, but up till now, I've only seen his decline as a side story, as a contributing factor. But I think it's becoming, in and of itself, a major issue. And there is every reason to invoke the 25th Amendment. Did you see the absolutely ludicrous presentation that Melania Trump presided over with her little buddy humanoid robot? It was beyond ridiculous, especially since it focused on education. They want humanoid robots interacting with our children? That's what they want? That's what they think we want? No, that may be what the gigabillionaires want. That may be what the fascists want. We don't want it. Speaking for myself, I don't want to be anywhere near a humanoid robot ever. I don't want to interact with them doing business on a retail level, as a coworker in my place of employment, checking in at the airport. I don't care what the situation is. I do not want to interact with humanoid robots ever. The thought of having one in my home is unthinkable. That is the last thing I want in my home, ever. And I thought, I can't be alone thinking this. Do you want to interact with a humanoid robot? Do you want one in your home, operating autonomously? Well, it turns out I'm not alone. It's not everybody, but it's a great majority. Most Americans, large majorities, are uncomfortable with robots. Only 16% describe themselves as comfortable. Only 38% said robots would make life easier. See, I'm not even arguing that point. Sure, they'd make life easier. If they can load the dishwasher and do the laundry and vacuum the floor, and yeah, I'm not even debating that point. They could make life easier. I don't want them in my house. And as far as making life easier, that's speculation at this point. Computers generally in the home, and then later smartphones, every step along the way were supposed to make our lives easier. Instead, they make them more complicated. I'm in the position now where I'm looking for a new dentist. And I started online, and it was just such a royal pain in the ass that I finally just gave up. I did use the interwebs to locate a bunch of dentists in my area. I just got in my car and I drove. I just went to their offices, talked to a person. You know, are you taking new patients? If so, do you take my insurance? If so, when can I make an appointment? I wasn't getting anywhere online. Nowhere at all. Leaving text messages, leaving voicemails, getting no response. Wasn't sure if the information was even up to date because, often it isn't. Oh, they left this location 10 years ago. Anyway, I digress. It doesn't always make life easier. But no, people don't want humanoid robots. Robotics itself, I understand. Certainly robotics in a factory setting. You've all seen the big auto assembly lines, these huge industrial arms. Yeah, robotics in and of itself, bring it on. That's just the latest example in a new technology, which has been happening since the advent of humankind. New technologies, from the wheel to the arrow, and then all the way up to today. I understand that new technologies happen. And every time they do, people go crazy. Oh, it's the end of the world. But this is qualitatively different. The wheel couldn't decide on its own to roll away. The arrow couldn't decide autonomously to hurl itself into a perceived enemy. All right? What we're talking about now is AI, autonomous AI. And forgive me because I'm not an expert. You probably know more about this than I do. I won't get all the terminology right. But it's already, in many areas, more intelligent, to use that word loosely, than us. It's more capable than us of doing many, many things already. And it's only a matter of time when they can do everything better than we can. But more importantly, they can do it of their own volition. And so, no, I don't want a humanoid in my house. I don't want a humanoid robot teaching children. This is insane. And the fact that we're even entertaining this idea, and that the First Lady of the United States is having her happy little expo roundtable discussion on AI and robotics. Good Lord. Talk about not being an expert. I know I'm not. I know she's not. And here she is proposing that they become a major part of American education. Just nuts. As I've always said, if AI generally can handle mundane jobs, mundane, repetitive factory jobs, or even mundane, repetitive mental tasks, fine. Have at it. All the people worried about job loss, not a problem. When AI is doing all of that work, we can do much more important work. We can take care of each other. The whole care economy would be revolutionized. Childcare, elder care, health care, all areas that need human-to-human contact. And right along with that, above all of that, education. Education at all levels, but especially young children. In a child care setting, instead of having a handful of desperate, low-paid, overworked, underinsured workers for, 50 kids at a time, you could have a teacher-to-student ratio of 1-to-1. We could have all the people we needed when we're set free from the mundane jobs. Elder care. I've spent lots of time in nursing homes, in elder care facilities, just desperately, woefully understaffed. And once again, the lowest rung of employment. Low pay, long hours, overworked, no benefits to speak of. These are the worst jobs in the economy, the least respected jobs. Jobs that require the hardest work, the most dedication, the most humanness. So the billionaire owners want robots to take care of our children, to take care of our grandparents. They want robots to listen to our symptoms and to take our blood pressure. There's a great book I read years ago called Ecotopia. There was a wonderful scene when the protagonist of the book needs to have some health care, some emergency care. And in the world of this utopian novel, it was completely appropriate and normal for healthcare workers to have physical contact with their patient, to hold their hand, to hold them, to hug them. And it wasn't weird and it wasn't sexual. It was just understood that human-to-human contact is healthful. I remember shortly after reading that book, I was a student at San Francisco State University, and back in those days, I used to get a migraine every once in a while. I don't know why. More stressful times, I guess. I haven't had one in decades. But I had a migraine headache. It was pretty bad. So I went to the student health clinic. They gave me a Tylenol or something, and they sent me to an empty room and had me lie down. And it was right after I read this book. And I asked one of the nurses there, I was the only one in the place. They weren't busy. I asked her, could you stay with me? Could you just hold my hand and stay with me? Because I had just read this book and I thought, that sounds good. That sounds right. I think that would really help me right now. And she looked at me like I was crazy, of course. She told me she couldn't do that. That's against the rules. Well, again, I digress. Look, when AI takes over most of our jobs, I'm absolutely fine with that. As long as it allows us to be human, to be more human, especially with each other. Of course, that's impossible as long as profit is the central organizing element of our economy. That's why we have to abolish profit, abolish money if at all possible. See, I don't say abolish money and abolish profit just because it's some idea I have, just because it's some sort of religious tenet. No. At this point, it's a necessary and central component of any kind of future that makes sense. The very existence of profit is creating this runaway train in all areas. Degradation of the earth, the exploitation of workers, of resources, and especially now that AI and robotics have punched their ticket on this runaway train, the situation is only more dire and more imminent. It's right on top of us. We cannot afford to have a world where billionaire owners make the rules. And getting back specifically to AI, it's already, students already can no longer read books. They're literally unable to read books because of the advance of social media, of AI, of addictive media platforms. We've all heard the stories. They're not even required anymore. When I was in high school, I read several books every year for multiple classes. In college, even more. Whole books, cover to cover. It was standard for everybody. University professors now aren't even assigning whole books. Their students can't do it. They're incapable. We've already damaged an entire generation. We want to keep digging this hole deeper? If AI wants to do the grunt work, I'm all for it. But we cannot allow it to steal our humanity. There's virtually no regulation. I don't think regulation would help anyway. I always talk about the arms race between the profiteers and the regulators. That's a losing battle all the way. And to step away from the craziness of humanoid robots, especially in schools, good Lord. We've already seen frightening examples of how AI can be and is, as we speak, being used against us. We're only now finding out all the shenanigans that the dodgy boys were up to when they invaded the Social Security offices. We're still learning the extent to which they've infiltrated these databases with our most private information, all in service of a fascist government. Hell, I don't want any government with that kind of leverage on me, let alone a fascist one. Literally every app on your phone is now a surveillance device. Every broligarch and his trillion-dollar company are in on the game, partnering with the fascists for universal surveillance. All of this information no longer just in the hand of advertisers, which we've known forever, but now everything right down to our biometrics in the hands of the IRS, the military, ICE, the FBI. AI has transformed the very nature of warfare, most prominently in Israel's genocide of Gaza, and now prominently displayed in the tens of thousands of attacks against Iran. The whole flap between Anthropic and their Claude system, and the Department of War Crimes demanding full capabilities of autonomous AI systems. Yeah, we're here. This is not a movie, and it's not the future. It's happening right now as we speak. And the dumbest spouse of the dumbest president in the history of the United States thinks we should set loose humanoid versions of this technology on our children at school. Because this fascist government and the broligarchs with whom they share the stage just love the idea. And as I said, we don't have to wait around for the results. Just like the kids who can't read books, all of us, research shows that already our reliance on AI is slowly eroding our cognitive abilities. The machines are taking more and more tasks over that once required human thought, and as a result, our brain chemistry is changing already. This is not taking generations in a Darwinian sense. It's happening to you and me in real time. We are less able to think critically, to solve problems. And there is only one solution. Count them. One. Take away the profit motive. No set of regulations in the world can countermand that powerful force. My calls to abolish money, and especially to abolish profit, are not just some random philosophy. If you can find another way out of this situation, please tell me, because I'd love to hear it. Just a couple of very brief thoughts about Saturday's No Kings rallies. The largest mass protest in the history of the nation, not bad. I'm very happy with the whole idea of mass rallies. I think they're a good thing. They serve as kind of a pep rally for everybody. We can feel less alone. We can promote great camaraderie between everyone. It's a great opportunity to organize, to get together, inspire one another. I could say 100 great things about the mass rallies. I was a little disappointed personally because Milwaukee, for the first time, didn't hold the rally downtown. There were several rallies, actually. The one I attended was on the east side, and only a couple of hundred people, in a neighborhood with cars honking as they went by, that kind of thing. And then pretty good size rally out in one of the parks in the west side of town. But that was only, 1,000, couple thousand at the most. Not like the tens of thousands we would have had downtown. So just for me personally, I was kind of disappointed. But I guess the main thing I want to say today, as we're kind of basking in our good memories of our rallies and feeling encouraged and inspired to go forward, that's all great. It's just not enough. In fact, if there's no other action besides the rallies, then it's less than not enough. Then it's a salve. It's a feel-good activity. It's even selfish, indulgent. It It could be argued that it does even more harm than good because it anesthetizes. It gives us false comfort. Especially if you're otherwise privileged by money or by race. If you enjoy privileges and this is all you do, yeah, I have to say that today. Again, many good things I can say about the rallies. There's a big get out the vote sentiment. Great. Voting is also not enough. You can't wait 2 years to act while the regime barrels forward with its bullshit every single day. In order to win this fight against fascism, we must act every day in our daily lives. And there must be some sort of sacrifice, some discomfort that we're willing to experience. It can't just be a party at a local park once every 6 months where we get together with our friends and we sing songs and we hold signs and we chat. Yeah, it's not enough. In and of itself, it's fine. It's great. I have no complaints, but it can't stand alone. In order to change the world, we've got to have some change in our lives. And we have to show some commitment in time, in energy. We have to do the work. Every movement in the history of humankind teaches us that. And especially the recent history of this country. Civil rights movement, women's movement, LGBTQ, name it. No movement you can name ever had any success without boycotts and strikes and direct action, without disruption, civil disobedience. And of course, the very positive underlying notion that supports all of that, a strong foundation, a network of mutual aid. So I'm not here to shame anybody. I'm especially not here to mock anybody, as some people do. They just mock the rallies. I'm not here to do that. But I'm just here to remind you, do what you do and do what you can. Do what you do means go to your strength. The movement needs every conceivable skill. If you can write, if you can cook, if you're a healthcare worker, take your skills, whatever they are, into an organization and use them. That's do what you do. Do what you can means do what you're able to do. Only you can decide that. Depending on your age, your well-being, your health, your physical and mental capabilities. You be the judge. I'm not going to judge you. But I am going to encourage you. I'm going to invite you to join the movement in a real, tangible way. Yes, I'll encourage, I'll invite, I'll even plead with you. A friend of mine on social media said, if this is your first No Kings rally, welcome. If it's your second or third, and you haven't done anything else in between, you need to reflect on that a little bit. All right. This and all episodes can be heard at the website, charlespurcell.com, or on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks to our flagship terrestrial station, River West Radio in Milwaukee. Find us on Blue Sky and Substack. Peter Donalds wrote and performed our theme song. Okay, I love you. I'll see you out there.